literally happening. And yet happening doesn't seem to be the word. It seems to be that there's an up in the airness with things in flux, while there is a pressure for certainty in identity and circumstance and situations that there's a certainty in life when in fact we'll say for this moment, the virus seems to have exposed us to a flux where things in flux. And so that when there is in flux, it seems then there is a greater pressure to have an identity that has a historical reality. But then when you have a historical reality that excludes others, and so then it creates the very premise of the up in the airness is that it's a soul searching period. And the soul searching period is not so much around identity, but there's a factual soul searching where somehow it's not literal death in the air, but what so far the farm fears the most is it's disappearance, it's death. What it calls its death is its fear. So it has signals that transmit to it its disappearance. But when it then comes to psychologically or reflectively, you see that there are forces at play that create an uncertainty as to who you are and what you are and what is going on. And yet we're still in the simplicity of the day-to-day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we were just talking about you there, Derek, but
Little old me.
well, didn't include you.
Little young you. Young
The
you.
about you didn't include you for a moment.
Story of my life.
But we are discussing not only our life, but our existence as a lens towards a happening. So the lens doesn't have an opinion to that degree that shapes it, but the shape of the lens gives it a dimension. And so let's say you see, to the degree that you can see and be with something, you see that it has many dimensions to it. Who is that? Okay. What is the simplicity of seeing dimension? Let's say you're walking past somebody and you see someone's really strung out and they ask you for some money and you feel for them. And that feeling for them allows you to translate how much you have, how much you can spare, what you can do. And there's a thing going on that just is awakened by a request. Is it there pre-existing already? Does the formulation it? Okay. So somehow you see that there are dormant experiences waiting for an outer expression. And many of the outer expressions kind of need an accident to ignite them. So you see that an event reveals this as a happening in your life anyway. But once it's revealed, there's another dimension that comes into your life. It then becomes a kind of second nature, like a sense of smell or feeling or whatever, enters into the story for you. So at that point in time, you start to enter into what would be called a creative life that is not identity driven, meaning the history, but somehow has a relationship. Now that is what I was just reading an article in the New Yorker about the beginning of method acting and how it evolved in the beginning and what took place and the breaks that happened with the founders, and some wanted it to be natural, some wanted it to be clearly that you were acting, that you brought your imagination to something, but the others say, no, you brought your history to something. And then there was confusion at one point. They said, look, then it becomes a battle where it becomes a psychological equation when you're trying to free the energy. And that was to start, and I think it was Laurence Olivier who said, look, You're an actor, just act. And these guys said, no, Brando, I think it was with Brando it started. And it was very interesting. When it started with guys like James Dean and Brando and a couple of immersive actors, but then it took different shapes and forms and study about one simple thing. Can you just act? Or should, in fact, you go through something yourself transformative? And so then then there were groups of people who were trying they were trying to avoid show business of their work, but saw their work as a kind of pure exploration. And that acting was a kind of way of exploring the human experience that was hidden to the everyday person who was surviving. But when they saw it on the screen or they saw it in the play, it hit them.
Mm.
And so they felt then that the films and the plays were bringing in a change in the social fabric. Because if you thought that it was being normal to being punished in your marriage or something like that, and then you saw a movie of a punishment of the marriage, you said, holy shit, it kind of ended for you in seeing a reflection of you. It kind of asked for you, there were moments when it asked for you to be treated human, because you saw the inhumanity in the continuity of a situation where it was taken for granted. And so then you saw people doing what you would consider impossible work for yourself, and yet it was taken for granted that they did it. And you started to see a whole other dimension that really had a creative thread to it. And that when you met someone, or they met you in a circumstance, it interrupted the automaticness of something. To a reflective. And the reflective is not too much of an interruption, but the reflective interrupts the normalcy for a moment. And whatever level of reflection takes place, it does seem to shift the plane of something. Because as you reflect on the moment, you become aware of the moment. A moment that is passing by.
Mm.
So then you see somehow in this time period, we've been working with memory in our everyday life. And you understand that memory is not only a shoot into the past or something, but it can be split off by an accidental reading of something or seeing of something or hearing or the senses. So you start to see there's a coordinate that's happening anyway. But in the slowing down of the pace around us, seemingly, the awareness of the interaction of the body and the creativity were not so differentiated as separate entities. But you also saw that, or I'm seeing that in your senses, certain memories can come or experiences can come that open up the moment or shift it, where time is shifted into a more, not so much a 24-hour day, but just time available. When you need it to be a 24-hour day, it can be, if you meet someone at the airport or something like that. But generally, it is just flux time. And it's the same sort of flux that can allow you to read a book about 400 years ago. I was just reading again this Sabbatai Sebi book from 1600s and what the climate was like. And it sounds very much like looking at the news here and what's going on, the kind of up in the airness of everything, according to them. And yet, when you speak to people and friends, you see, it seems life is going on. The everyday is going on. And yet, when you look at the news and you hear this or that, life is not going on. It's up in the air. These guys are going to decide today whether it's going to go on or not. tomorrow we're going to know if they're going to decide whether life goes on or not, and we're just doing our thing. What's our thing? You know, I like to have an avocado every day if I can. Is that okay, Carrie? Or that's going to be too much also?
No, that sounds good to me.
Just a dopey wish in the story.
Yeah.
So it may be almost, who knows, from what they're predicting, time to come, an avocado will be a dream. Not a need. But right now, according to all the feel goods, it's a need.
Mm.
What do you think? So is any illusion, delusion, when does it become delusionary? Again, using the axiom for myself is that when you cry at the movie, there's a beauty in the illusion. Something touched you and you see there was a dormant element in you waiting to be touched. Something in the movie touched something in you. And there was a response. And somehow the premise is that that will join somewhere in your memory. If there was a response to the film in some way, that when you have the memory of it, it also brings around that same cellular interaction. That somehow there is a creative act happening in your life that resembles the movie that you see. And there's a transmission, and you see that your life has hundreds of influences that are awakened when there's a juxtaposition of incidents or circumstance or thoughts or whatever, but somehow they're all contained in you. And so you understand that the original creative element was to locate that voice inside yourself, to have evidence or to see what really happened, that there was something in you that was a witness more to the life that you've lived.
Yeah.
And that somehow one attempts to locate that through this way, through science, through magic, through medicine, through meditation, through this or that, to locate that element that one presumes to have been the observer of the whole story while you've lived it. But that when you locate it, when you dream of it, think of it, hope to reach it, whatever level you're thinking, you're trying to reach it through science, through art, through Jesus, through God, or whatever, or be one with this, but that there is a witness to the story that is not just a witness, but is in fact actually the substance of the life being lived. That the story is only an aspect of this energy. And that the story is a conversation with the universal around it. And yet it's roped into the immediate. So then you have some awareness of that in your life, and with whatever level of awareness you have, it shifts the plane of your life from the literal day and the literal existence, where one may have looked for a relationship out of survival, one may then have the fancy, they're free enough to look for a relationship out of a love feeling, which is a very privileged situation when much of it seems to be around survival and organized already. But then the idea of being free enough to fall in love and fall in love, then opening a doorway and creating a possibility, however Meshuggah sounding it is, in fact, it resembles more of our life than anything else.
Mm.
But the attempt to literalize it makes the poetic aspects of it kind of silly or dumb or non. But as you see, there is in fact an aspect of the life story that is not you. And you see that somehow it has an expression of its own in the story. And you meet it in your own lifetime when it creates a kind of reflection the reflection that is resisted in the normal life of survival when the literalness of oneself is taken for granted. But in the creative act of life, when the literal is interrupted in a deep way, meaning that the elements that kept it going somehow depart from it, depending on the level, from death to get lost, baby. But that chakra of experience, where get lost, baby, comes into your life all of a sudden when you got used to the status quo, and it shifts the plane. And it's not only because it shifts the plane for the rent or the house or the literalness, it shifts the plane because somehow in relationship you are invited. When it shifts or you discover its loss, there is a loss. Even though you're still alive and everything is still alive, something has shifted. There's a death of something. At the same time that the form survives. Okay. Especially when it comes as a shock to the system that throws you into a kind of, where it gets past the self-owning the story and organizing it psychologically.
Mm.
But you see the magic of having had the experience in the first place. You see the weirdness, the normalcy that you've taken for granted in the absence shows you that you could not put that production no matter what you tried to do. You could not have ever gotten in through any kind of way that person to live with you for that period of time and to do it. Somehow it had to be schmucky. Somehow it had to be dopey. But it's only schmucky and dopey to the literal person. It's
Right.
not. It's not schmucky and dopey to the creative act. So you become aware that there's a parallel life, and that somehow you've been skating back and forth in a parallel life, where there is an integrity in the creative life that is not Boy Scout integrity in that way, although it has a similar, before the rules, it had a similar feeling of friendship and friendliness towards life. And then it became experiential, or experiential, I guess I should say. Yeah. So let's say you're in it and you see to some extent that Carrie has been this long rehearsal where you've played it, explored it, tried every avenue of it.
Yeah.
And that what looks like mistakes or accidents or this or that within the story was merely within the story. Not that the story had no meaning, but it has no meaning as a continuity or meaning repetition.
Yeah.
So let's say it's throwing you out of repetition. That there is, and so then it was interesting that I did run into that review of the method acting in the new school. And I remember going to the new school for one semester on writing there. And we had the school in the park. We went to the park there and we had the whole class was outdoors there, and it was a pretty nice way of teaching, where they kind of actualized the teaching, where it was an immersive, and that was hot at the time, immersive way of teaching where it was then in your memory. It wasn't just owned by yourself professionally, but somehow it was planned that when there was a creative moment, it would pop up. So there was somehow a recognition that experiences were stored in you. And it had to you the dimension that it happened to you in time. But to the body and other experiences, it was happening in that moment. But you had a literal time factor, but you see that then the body and the being was some sort of instrument. and that the experiences of the person were almost chords that you were playing on the instrument. Hmm? And that you perceived that you were the instrument itself. And you didn't differentiate to some extent the playing of it, in that you had the experience of being the instrument. And in being the instrument, you also saw something that was holy. And it wasn't holy in terms of rules or regulations or laws or anything like that. There was a whole other dimension that opened up that came across as feelings. But whatever they were, they eluded being captured by knowing them. That somehow the creative features that ran through the system would give you bits of information if you wanted to write or play, but the essential information running through the story was at that point, then your life was with the energy. Not that you would just learn this or that from the energy to be better at it or this or that, although that was there, but that somehow the one almost surrendered to the energy giving the life form. That there was the energy before there was the expression. And where it didn't come from history, but mystery. And then it did take you into different forms of stream of consciousness, art forms, hearing, seeing, where it's second nature to you now to be able to go into all the expressions, or even the religious expressions, but that you don't have a relationship to the literal religion. And they say, why? Because you see, it had a motive of the people in that neighborhood at the time, in that country at the time, what they were doing. They had motives. And you discover an energy that doesn't have motives like that, where survival isn't the dominant feature. And then you get a Jesus idea, and then you get a Buddha idea, where they said, be human. And that means as dumb as someone, you're walking down the street and you see a guy hungry or something, and you just share a moment or a word or a conversation, I'll say. So you understand that, in fact, it is being what you are. It is just revealed. But once it is revealed, it is your expression. It is no longer you'd like it to be, as we see our friend here, Catherine, second nature to you now. Let me see. Second nature to you now, like breathing out and breathing in. Do you know that song? I'm trying to remember it.
I do.
But that was also a description of the experience that I say, where they say, when I mentioned where the rabbi said, aren't you a Jew? And the priest said, aren't you a Catholic? I said, I'm a schmuck who happens to have Jewish in him, who happens to have Catholic, who happens to have these experiences in him. But I'm human who happens to be these things. I say, holy, that is a discovery. When I utilize that form where you discover that you thought your mother was a mother who happened to be a person, and then you read a diary or discover something, and you discover a person who happened to be a mother, I would call that still holy shit as a discovery, because you see something holy. The story is released from its continuity to its wonder, to the other dimensions that were coexisting. And they were just dopey dimensions. They didn't have to be people who flew on flying carpets. They were just people. But having to hide their humanhood, their personhood, their beinghood in different places. Having coexistences with friends, where you meet the story in a momentary loss, which seems like loss, and it sends you traveling back in time. And when you see it, the difference is discovery. Knowing allows a continuity. Discovery interrupts the status quo and creates the first reflection of what you would call creative reflection, but I would say we'll call it soul searching, because you discover that there's a hidden dimension in your own existence. So they've tried to give it a name when you're thrown into that neighborhood of soul. That's a pretty nice name. When there is a powerful, we'll say parallel existence where soulfulness is the element of it, and it brings some element of that into the literal world, then you see flux, not literalness. And you see that issues, that somehow there's a literal belief in issues that are created. And you see all of life is missing just an honest, heartfelt conversation. How would you say? Could you sit down and say, look, there is no such thing as Ukraine. We made it up, man. If we made it up, we can shift it around and do this. Okay. There is no, we made it up. The Washington, the Delaware. Okay.
Putin also, we made it up.
Thanks for the story. We made it up. You came from a mystery. These two Meshuggah people in Texas had you. How more crazy? That's even more than the Bhagavad Gita that you came from Texas. When you reflect on it, they're going to say, in the next life, in the next zone, they're going to say, Texas? What is Texas? Okay. So let's say that what we've taken for granted as our literal existence, obviously in loss, we then start to see, we are then exposed to dimensions of our own life that are hidden in plain sight, that we've tried to pluck or we tried to locate. But when you do explore it, you start to see the existence as a creative process itself. Not that one needs to be creative, but the perception of one's life as a creative process opens up a second nature to you now, as creativity being the main aspect of the expression. The rent money is not the main thing then. The rent money is a creative expression also, part of it, but it's not the dominant force that, so at one point, when you perceive that, I do feel that you come into a phase where there's no bullshit, where the survival sense hasn't captured the story. And that perception, you kind of die to the literalness. And you see the whole manufacturing as death being the threat of one's existence, and how unconsciously and consciously how it's played, but it's not allowed you to explore a whole hidden dimension. And then you also see the shifting of identities and genders. But what it does, whatever the social fabric has to go through, what you go through is you see a whole up in the airness, a whole flux, that the literalness of it was taken for granted, that the literalness of survival and continuity was the life was taken for granted, when all of us were straining and yearning to have a creative life. And in retrospect, you discover in the loss of it, well, in another dimension, you see that the life has been a creative life, not a literal one. And that one is the last to know. But there are moments in retrospect, you see the piece from the audience's perspective, the helplessness of the story. And there's something revealed that enters into this life story. Now that again happened a little bit with me with this article last week on sleep in the New York Times, where they revealed a whole segment of the population that explores alternative sleep, but they're calling alternative sleep because they're claiming they manufactured this idea that sleep is a literal 8-hour sleep, and that you were rewarded for 8 hours sleep with an 8-hour day and so on like that. And the day was organized that way, but so much of the world was not organized that way. Their work was at home, or their work was in the farm, and whatever they were, caretaking, they had to wake up to take care of babies. And so they discovered parallel sleep. But what they did release you from was that they found that there was self-punishing if you couldn't sleep 8 hours.
Yeah.
You would try to sleep 8 hours, you would take this, you would try this, you would go to therapy clinics. So you were made to feel as if it was an illness, when in fact sleeping 8 hours was an illness to the body, to most bodies who were creative or whatever, who didn't have a literal workaday world. And so they were finding a lot of challenges that were happening to those folks who were trying to fit themselves into that scheme, even in a job sort of zone, like where they had to crush their creativity into an 8-hour zone period like that. So, but what it is the reading of it released the story for one thing that was interesting, that if you woke up in the middle of the night, you didn't have to try to get back to sleep. It was natural. So one suggested that they have their own segmented sleep where you can get up for an hour or two and do some writing or work or whatever you need to do. And then if you'd like, go to sleep around 4 o'clock again and maybe wake up around 6 o'clock again or so. And, so they segmented the day, but what they did do was just awaken one to what is, so to speak. Krishnamurti's famous "What Is." That was somehow the premise of the 8-hour sleep, even though you didn't have that 8-hour sort of day in front of you. And that the day itself was creative. And the premise, what they said going back in time, was that sleep was natural. It was not a forced thing that you had to do at this time or that time. But depending on if you were an artisan or not, you would sleep on the fly. And I remember as a kid in the Navy being in the watchtower on the ship at sea there, and I would have from between 12 and 4, staying up and how things look, and then how you altered your week in order to accommodate that. But just the reading of the article, even if we have been doing it anyway throughout the years, the reading of the article released a story where I found again another very nice dimension in lying awake in the nighttime. And it did resemble its own dream state, an awake state. You know, that kind of state sometimes where you were somewhat dreaming and you were awake simultaneously. Okay. I discovered that state. So let's say the everyday is still revealing everydayness. How are you, Catherine?
I'm good. It's been busy, but good. I'm still here.
Did you read that article 2 weeks ago in the New York Times that said that they discovered maybe a gene in some people that they live to be able to see their grandchildren, whatever they think they're doing, whatever career move, their real movement when they examined their body was they hung around for grandchildren.
I can relate to that. Yeah.
So, I didn't know it. I thought I was waiting around to fix the house up or something. But they've let us know. And then Segway has given me a little gift that his girlfriend gave, and it's called Instant Happy Childhood Memory Spray. You see it here?
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, you can also get a spray if you want to remember being a guest on the Oprah show. You could get a spray for $4. If you remember working at McDonald's, remember being, but this here says thousands of dollars of therapy later, and you still can't get over the time your parents forgot you overnight at the mall. You try to heal from those family camping trips, but every time you see a squirrel, you cry. High school, don't even go there. Wasn't that what mom was dating an Amish preacher and picked you up after school in a horse and buggy? If talking about your childhood makes you cry, maybe it's time to get new memories. Our patented artificial memories contain a wide selection of pure childhood memories that will make you cherish looking back. Enjoy a sense of innocence, security, and absolute well-being as you instantly remember fine family vacations, backyard playtime, and loving day-to-day activities that are with both a mom and a dad. Smile as you recall favorite teachers, relatives, and friends. Relive holiday scenes and special events, warmly remembering your life not as it was, but as it should have been. Memories as real as if they happened to you. Thanks to Jesus Had a Sister Productions. No more gaudy patches or handfuls of memory-stimulating pills. Enjoy going back to your childhood every time thanks to powerful artificial memories. Now sold in convenient spray form. Slips into any pocket. What are you waiting for? I think I'm going to try this. What do you think? Should we send some out?
I think I'll pass on that. I've got a lot of memories.
But this you can fashion your own.
Yeah, I'll keep mine. Thanks, though.
You know, based on the ones they want to give me, I think I'll keep mine also. I thought I would trade mine. But once I saw what they were offering, then we'll say if you looked at from a different place, then you also see the different elements that ran through it.
By the way, Danny, I'm sorry I was late. I was using the old link to get in.
You know, I also was late because Mary's not here. She's in New York at the moment.
Oh,
And I also used the old link. And then Spiro was here and he got me in somehow through the other device because I use Zoom. How are you?
I send an email just so you guys know, I send an
No,
email every
that's-
week.
no, I got it later, Kai. Thank you.
Oh.
At first, I used the old one and then I saw your email. But that's why I was late anyway. Not out of any disrespect.
You didn't feel any disrespect, did you? Kai? No.
No, no.
So then, at least here in this little angle, everyone's a sweetheart. Everyone's a sweetheart, even in the sharing of the experience from that perspective. You know, where it's where you're merging the creative with the everyday.
Oh, I have a film recommendation. If you haven't seen it on Amazon Prime, it's directed and starring Robert Redford and Meryl Streep's in it. It's called Lions for Lambs. No, Lions for Lambs.
Okay.
I
think I did see it recently.
It's good. Yeah.
A film that Spiro is setting us up for tonight is what's the name of it, Janet? Do you remember? The trilogy that we watched there. I'm the worst person in the world. I think that's the title, The Worst Person in the World.
Oh, don't know that. There's another one that's interesting. It may be Netflix called Inventing Anna.
Yes.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, I'm halfway through. It's interesting.
It's wonderful. Very.
It's based on a true story, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I think we're watching some of it. Boy, oh boy, look how much you can watch and see. But I'm also seeing so much weird stuff. I've seen a couple of early Italian movies today. And then let's see what else is actually creatively going on. And now Spiro is able to get us films that are still out there, but that we can see. We saw a movie called Come On, Come On. That was pretty good. It was pretty good, actually. The movies that he's able to get on, they have some pretty great films. But there's a wonderful article in the New Yorker this week, and it's about the beginnings of the method acting school and the acting studio and and all the fights that went on and who came out of what and this and that. But it's pretty brilliantly put together. And then it kind of allowed you to see some of the films again, some of the old films again from that perspective. But it's in this February 7th, New Yorker. And it probably, you can get it online here, and it's,
What's the name of the article?
yeah,
Dan?
I'm looking it up now for you.
You know, I'm a member of the Actors Studio and I
Yeah.
studied with Lee
Okay.
Strasberg.
So it's just called 60, a history of method acting, but it was very nice to read. And it brings up, I'm sure it'll bring up memories to you and who did what and, the critics, books, what's my motivation? So it's, yeah, I would read the article. But How the Method Made Acting Modern by Alexandra Schwartz.
Don't know her.
It's in the critics section on books, what's my motivation? But
Is it on the Sunday paper, Danny?
no, it's in the New Yorker
New Yorker
magazine.
magazine.
On the New Yorker, yeah.
But it goes back to the beginning from the Lower East Side and, you know, what happened there. And one of the books is The Method, How the 20th Century Learned to Act by Isaac Butler. So then they go back, but then but the article itself is really nice because it goes back to the little fights they had and who did what and where they came from and, you know, okay, and the different theories as they developed it that went along, and then which actors came from what, Brando and it names all the actors that came from it, actually.
I found Lee Strasberg terrifying.
Yeah,
I
that's
was-
what many of
I
them
was
said.
very young. I was 20.
What's her name? What's the name? What's the other woman that came out of it there?
Stella Adler, you mean?
Yeah, so Stella Adler also didn't find him terrifying, found him too stupid, kind of Freudian crap.
Yeah, but she broke away. And
Yeah, no, well, she also taught Brando and others. So
Yeah.
she then came from that. Olivia said, look, if you're an actor, just act. So there was those who were trying to get into the natural school also, just act. And then hanging out with each other as an immersive, they found out what he did in studying them was he found out that everyone was great. The person who played the plumber and the person who played the king. And when everyone was hanging out and just played the thing, that everyone was a great actor, actually. They were just able to do it naturally in the familiar. So that was Stanislavski's method, or his idea that you can get a naturalness going in a situation. But then they, as they said, they did find, what's his name again?
Lee Strasberg.
Terrifying. He would tell you how to behave or whatever, you know. But then, well, it was a shifting premise. It was a shifting premise. I did go to the new school, I think, for 1 or 2 semesters for writing. But that's how dopey I was. It's when I quit.
Who was teaching? Who was teaching?
I was 15. I quit high school.
Oh,
I ran
you
away
know,
from high
I
school.
taught writing there for 8 years at the new school,
Yeah.
but later, you know, in the 70s.
Yeah. So this must have been 1956.
It's an interesting place.
Believe it or not. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It was an interesting place then. We used to go to the park to learn, to have class there.
Hmm,
You know, Washington Square Park there.
I
and
do
then-
know. Yeah.
And then there was an old Henry's Tavern, I think, that we also met and, you know, like that. So I love the schooling like that, where you just opened up the schooling to the atmosphere around you.
And Stroud's was just a couple of blocks away, the bookstore, the used bookstore, that huge Strands.
But now as I look back in it, I see I was in the movie. You understand? I was in the movie looking for the movie. We're finding elements of that here with Bitcoins and what they're telling me here, Spiro, with Bitcoins that exist and it doesn't exist. The artwork exists and it doesn't exist. And then how do you make a Bitcoin or an NFT Bitcoin out of the artwork? And you take the literal artwork and you turn it into a picture of the artwork, and the picture of the artwork becomes the reality. And you deal with a world that sees that reality as reality. Your reality is old-fashioned idea of a literal painting. Okay, so then you step into a place where it's a whole other language, but then you also understand one element of the language very quickly. Make a buck. Even though you saw some interesting elements to it, and even though you saw it had some creative elements, it all was conspiring to make a buck in some way. Or as far as you can see, you were looking to still see if there were some naive dimensions in it. And some of them are trying to explain that in the NFT, which is this transformation of a artwork into something that would be understood in a digital world. So you're using digital speak in that world to other people who speak that language. And in that, it's a creative process. So then I say, I'm not so much interested in investing in it in that regard. I was interested, can we create a digital world from our everyday world? Because to me, it's pretty digital world. There's 50 years of weird collections and byproducts of interactions with relationships. And there's a conversation going on about the human experience happening in the circumstance, on the walls, in letters. And some of the artwork is right up there too, it turns out in retrospect. But most of it came from trading, not so much business, but meeting the artist, trading, friendliness. So I always felt that, if I passed away, that then there would be an examination of the tchotchkes that are in the house, and you would see it would be able to pay off the house and buy a couple of years or whatever, that it's not, and it had its own Bitcoinness to it without it being literally that way, where there was value in things or not, it would go down or up. But my own feeling was our own kind of, I can't call it spiritual, but kind of creatively living for me, where somehow it couldn't literally be business or this or that, had to be more interactions with people and trading. Even coming to such a point where last time for the car that we just paid off on, someone bought a painting from us and that purchased the car. So I like that the painting becomes a car when needed, and it's been like that. So far it's been like that. And I thought that somehow it was like that in this Bitcoin world. Because at the same time, when we were trading all those years, you brought a kind of friendly integrity to the transaction. When you found out you were swindled, there was a real flaw, a real hurt, or that you allowed a certain kind of swindling to take place since you were not really in the business world, but you were visiting that world. And it was around the purity of the art in some way that took you through it. And there are moments in visiting this art world that I visited while living here, where there were so many friends who were artists or involved, that it threw me back to when I was a kid with my father painting, where he would paint murals, and I hated painting murals with him on weekends. That they would enlist the kids to help him do the paintings. And they used turpentine to wash yourself with and stuff like that. But I hated the art that I then came to see in retrospect was pretty beautiful. But I was out of it completely. I was just a kid who was pissed off because I had to put my weekends helping my father with the paintings for periods. So then I meet the art from the artist, where the person would not stop painting throughout his life once he discovered painting. Even in a nursing home, the last picture of him is painting a dish or something. That the painting was his expression once he discovered it. But once you discover him, not as anything else, then you start to see what looked like a history is actually a mystery. It's not only you've inherited the shape of parents, but you also, when it's released from the karma, you see that you share a dharma that you could never have given your parents. Your own yearning, your own longing, You could never have given your parents that they also had hidden in their life a spiritual desire, a desire for a true love or whatever Meshuggah idea. And that somehow they had to give into survival, into this or that. So I meet you. Hey, Papa, how's everything going? I didn't see the story. And I couldn't meet you then. I meet you then as a spiritual being without the hoo-ha. Something that was not perceived in the everyday. That is released. Where the story is released from the possessive. Where the story is released from the survival element. And you see it's always been around the journey. And that it's assumed many identities. And you could also see how many productions of your own that you've had, how many movies that you've created for yourself, where the thread of you ran through the story. But the story was not you, but the thread of you meet. How's teaching going on, Catherine?
I'm doing a lot of it on Zoom.
Oh, that's good.
But I just got invited to Palm Springs Writers Guild again for June, and they want me to do it live to drive down. And so I hope it's safe.
Oh boy, well, let me see. I remember taking that trip there.
Yeah, it's hot. It's hot there usually.
Well, you can stop by and say hello. Are you actually going to drive alone? Or are you going to take a bus?
I'm not sure. Sometimes I call someone my assistant and they'll drive me so I can conserve my energy. It's come to
Yeah,
that,
that's-
Danny.
And I understand. Well, it was always waiting. It was always waiting.
I
isn't
was
it?
always waiting in the
Yeah,
wings.
it was-
Yeah.
It does seem like even from the get-go it was all waiting.
Yeah.
You
But
just needed that.
I love the teaching. The nice thing about Zoom, we can have people from all over the world, you know.
Yeah.
If someone is from
Yeah.
London or New York and
So far, it's been okay. When I've been speaking to folks in Europe and other places, it's okay. It's been pretty sweet to see. In fact, it's pretty remarkable. Time and space just flashed away. And you say, holy, again, holy shit. You need a chauffeur. And you mean the chauffeur is going to drive you 3,000 miles?
well, it's not that far, but I'm teaching in,
Well,
I'm teaching later
oh,
in
Palm
June.
Spring. Oh, I'm sorry. I had you in Florida. Palm
No,
Beach.
no,
Palm
California, Palm
Yeah.
Spring.
Oh,
you
that's
know.
great. No, that's great. No, that's great.
Yeah, it's
No, I had
pretty.
you.
No, not Florida. And I'm
How crazy.
invited to Sequoia National Park to teach live there mid-June. So, you know, so I'm doing about 2 or 3 a month on them, but the rest are all on Zoom. They're
And,
hosted from New York, but I just get to stay here to do it, which is nice.
So how is it? Is that okay for you?
Yeah, I'm getting lazy because I just staying in Ojai. So, but I'm getting used to it. I'm reading a lot, watching a lot of movies. You know, waiting for my last book to come out, which isn't till summer.
What book are you reading? Anything? I'm trying to read, and I just saw a wonderful article in the Times about translators of books. And it happened to be the translator of this book that I just got by this Polish author, The Books of Jacob.
It's a
And,
novel. It's a novel.
Well, actually, when I read the review, I knew immediately it was a runoff of this 16th century Messiah, Sabbatai Sevi. You know, but it's by Sholem, Gershom Sholem. So he's always great, Sholem. But the book is called Sabbatai Sevi, S-E-V-I, The Mystical Messiah by Sholem. And it's pretty wonderful. There was a Messiah that came on a donkey in the 16th century. He had about 8 million followers. But then he converted to Islam when he went to Turkey there. He was forced. And then most of his followers left, but they created a combination religion of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam as one religion and one expression. So that's the story. But her book, I think her last book was Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead. So exhilarating in a way that feels fierce and private and almost inarticulate. But then the question is, once you read about the translator who wanted credit for books that she has written, then the author, and she posed together and gave her credit, gave the translator credit, and says and then the translator kind of indicated how important the translation is and the nuance and the sense of things. So it's still a hard book to read. I think I'll get it on audio because it's dense and it's about 800 pages. But
So
it's the book of Jacob.
I'm not clear. So this Olga, someone translated something from the 17th century?
No, she made up her own Pinchonian. She made her own Pinchonian fiction over
Oh, it's
what
a
may have been-
fiction. It's a fiction.
Her book is a fiction of the events of this messianic period that was also plague-ridden and war crusade-ridden, and people looking for religions. But when you looked at it, it was actually boys looking for girls to have babies and becoming any religion. So you had millions of people in flux supposedly around that period. And also the Spanish Jews were also kicked out of Spain around that time, or converted, or false conversions. So you had the whole Spinozian philosophical period taking place there of identity. So she's written quite a book, but the book again is based on this Sabbatai book. Now my father's name was Angelo here, but his name on the I guess the stone is Sabbatai also. So that must have been a code name at the time.
And the title of the book,
I think it
Danny,
means
is The
angel.
Books of Jacob, The Books of Jacob.
The books of Jacob, yeah.
Okay, I'll look. I just read a Dan Brown novel, The Lost Symbol, about the Masonic mysteries in Washington, D.C. and hidden treasures. You know, I must say, for what he does, he writes well. It's like a 510-page novel, but it was interesting. You know, he wrote Da Vinci Code.
Yeah.
But
But you'll read this article in the New Yorker.
I will. I'll look for
It's
it.
wonderful. I mean, even though you know it all already, just reading it coming back to you like that.
Well, I don't know
Just
the
accidentally.
early years. My time was the 70s with Lee and Shelley Winters and those people.
Yeah, I just saw a movie with her. I've been watching really old movies with Shelley Winter. It was what? Well, she was.
With Monty Cliff, was it that one?
Well, it was the one was with Sidney Poitier,
Sydney.
and it was the blind girl. She had a blind.
Oh,
daughter
a
that
patch
she-
of blue, a patch of
patch of
blue.
blue.
Yeah.
And he kind of brought decency to the girl. He met her accidentally, but she was kind of abusing the girl, the mother, and the grandmother or the grandfather there living in a slum apartment, but he gave some kind of humanness to her. And, but she's always been interesting.
Yeah.
Shelley Winters.
Oh, no, she's a character. Once I was doing a scene at the studio. In those days, I had long hair and, you know, I was always covering my face and my eyes with my hair. She stopped the scene, jumped up, ran, and took a bobby pin out of her hair and jerked my hair back and pinned it. It didn't even scare me to death because, you know, I was in my 20s. She was a force of nature, Shelley, you know.
I would say she always, have you ever seen her before, Shelley Winters? She's in these old movies, but she plays always pretty tough. But she also was in another one this week where this guy, this preacher, gets out of jail. Her husband apparently robbed the bank or something
I
and hid
don't,
the money in the house, and he's arrested in prison. And he tells this preacher who's in prison with him, but they're trying to figure out where the money is, and only his son knows, the kid. So then the guy dies trying to break out of prison or something, or maybe the preacher kills him, and he comes then to visit the family. And it's Shelley Winters, who's the mother, and he's romancing the family. And but the boy doesn't trust him. He knows that he's up to something, and he's trying to find the money. So it's a
I
scary
don't know
movie.
that one.
Oh, it was a very big movie at the time. Robert Mitchum was the preacher. And but the kid was the one who knew what was really going on, that he was romancing his mother in order to get the money, and that he was threatening the kids all the time. Very scary movie. I remember seeing it as a kid then, or a young person then, and it was tough then at the time. Maybe a Stanley Kramer style film or something. You know?
I love some of these old movies. They're really,
Well, as I say, again, I'm flying back over things. So we're looking at things just from different perspectives now. You're actually looking at it. So in some of these cases, even these movies that are coming up for the awards, I've had to see them 2 or 3 or 4 times. And I'm seeing them again from different perspectives. And some of the acting is great or whatever. You can release the storyline and just see. So some of it is great. There have been moments of beauty in a very weird time.
I bet you like The Power of Dog.
We had to see it 3 times.
See,
And the first time,
I
the
couldn't
first time,
stand it. I couldn't
well, the
stand
first time was problematic because we couldn't stand it like you, but then they were telling us how great it was.
I will never
But the
watch
one
it
person,
again.
but we couldn't
Why
stand it
not?
because we read, the guy review said he didn't buy the relationship of the 2 brothers. He said he didn't see that was possible between those 2 brothers. And he was right. When I looked at it, it didn't seem possible that those 2 guys would be brothers. So it did affect us for the first 1 or 2 times. But then we were able to see it for a 3rd time, and it was pretty good, actually, I have to say.
No, I thought it would be something you would like.
Mhm.
I saw it and I was so disgusted with
It
it.
looked too stilted in
But-
the beginning.
But I turned to my friend who was watching it with me and I said, this will get many Oscar nominations and will probably win.
Do you
Because
still get,
it's so dark, you know.
are you still on that, Oscar?
No,
nomination?
I stopped paying my dues, so
Yeah.
most of the movies that are coming out, I don't want to see. I prefer the British and the Scandinavian. I did see Almodovar's new movie, Parallel Mothers. I like that with Penelope Cruz. Did you see that?
No, we didn't see that one.
That's his latest.
Just saw Pain and Glory again, and then we had this 2 Mrs. Maisels come back on.
Yeah. It's
So then Spiro wanted to watch Mrs. Maisel last night, and then we're watching harrowing stuff, meaningful stuff. We just watched holy geez, I can't even remember. We're watching 4 or 5 at a time.
well, watch Lions for Lambs.
Okay, I'll do that. We
I
probably have
think.
seen it.
It's interesting to see it because it's about Afghanistan, but from Washington, D.C. point of view, to the people who pull the ropes and then about the 2 boys over there. It's
Does this
interesting.
sound weird, Derek? While the world, what's happening to the world anyway again? Ukraine.
Yeah, that's part of it.
I think it's a
Ukraine,
bluff.
if you put something on, then it says Ukraine, 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 Ukraine. Okay. And then they say, there was a dumb joke, Catherine, and a wife and husband, after being together so long, then she says, what were the intimate experiences you had? How many affairs or relationships have you had? And he says, no, let's not go into that. And she says, no, please, just, we're old now. Let's enjoy it. So he says, okay, how many? He says, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You,
Oh, God.
6, 7. You, 8.
Oh, boy.
He just goes on with this. And then you, 9, 10, 11. Okay. So something she didn't want to know. Or something he made up as a goof to her. Just to kid around. Because the dumb thing just came as such a shock there. So in each of these movies that we're calling, there's some kind of hidden reflection in every one of these dumb movies that we're choosing, even in the dumbest ones. Even in the Italian mystery movies where they're shooting up or whatever and they're doing this or that, there is some moment that is kind of reflective of what's happening.
Oh, Danny, I just saw Jodorowsky's latest film done a few years ago, Dance of Reality. The Dance of Reality.
Hmm.
Did you Alejandro Jodorowsky? who
Yeah,
did
but
El Topo?
I actually,
And I didn't like it, but it was fascinating. I saw it to the
I
end.
was offered it. I saw it offered and I turned it down. I didn't have the time to see it again.
You might
thought
like it.
The whole spectrum I was offered, but
Yeah, they say it's his best film and they consider it a kind of classic cult thing, but not my cup of tea, but I was curious to see
You
it
know,
since I knew him. Yeah.
we just have, there's just so much, well, I guess we have so much time available.
Yeah. Thank
That you
goodness
could,
for streaming.
No, thank goodness. Well, it actually has lent quite a nice dimension to the situation. Still reading is still tough. Reading without being interrupted, like 1 or 2 pages so it's still hard to stick to. And
What
this book,
interrupts? What interrupts?
everything interrupts, but if you probably having to pee.
Oh,
If nothing else will interrupt, having to pee.
that's
will
a
probably-
brief interruption.
It's a brief interruption.
Yeah.
Well, it'll probably be the most common one, but we'll see if that actually happens. But as I say, Mary is in New York, and she's in a very nice place on top of 76th Street on the rooftop, little apartment on the rooftop.
East or west?
West, of course, it has to be west. For that experience there. So in order to say thanks for the apartment there, we watched the movie Buster Scruggs.
Don't know
Have
that.
you seen the Coen brothers Buster Scruggs cowboy movie?
No.
It's very weird movie by the Coen brothers.
Yeah.
They just happen to live in that neighborhood,
Mhm.
So it's a very weird movie, but you may like it, Derek.
I saw that one.
You saw it. See it again. I thought I saw it also in the past, but then I don't remember a damn moment of it.
I remember the intro song pretty well.
You know how weird their movies are anyway.
Yeah.
And even their Macbeth is pretty weird. And what did you think of that, Catherine?
It didn't work for me. I like Frances McDormand, but no. It was more Coen Brothers than Shakespeare. Yeah. But it was an experiment.
It's Coen brother. It actually was the only one brother.
Yeah, it's one brother,
Not his own.
the husband.
Okay, at least I'm seeing enough, but there are moments in each of these things that speak to to our life situation.
Did you ever read the book I sent you, Buddha and the Dancing Girl?
I have it here. Why, you want me to send it back?
No, I
No,
sent it.
someone sent that once to me. If I asked them, did they read my book? They said, why, you want me to send it back?
No, I would just, like to know what you thought. I thought you would like the India section. That's it. Yeah.
Well, I'm going through it. Haven't read anything through.
Well, read the
this-
India
Well,
section.
this Virginia Woolf period of yours, I've stopped around that period.
Well, that's the New York theater years. Skip to the time in India. That might interest you more.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Or not.
Everyone else okay? Maybe we'll see you Sunday or Thursday, tomorrow night with Derek. Kai, you're okay? Keeping it together?
Yeah, I've started playing piano again, so that's consuming a lot of my time and passion, actually.
And Spiro's had some creative sense of, Mary's has a Minetta space that she has separately. He may do 2 classes there of a kind of immersive yoga class there, then maybe one at the store, and then maybe have some kind of, so then others may help in that, and so different situations are starting to awaken here. True, we'll see what shape it takes.
Danny, are you as well as you look?
I'm betwixt and between, I would say. Every now and then you get a little hint that you're betwixt and between.
Yeah.
But this new art, see if you can find this article, if it has the same effect for you. It was Tale of a Good Night's Rest in 2 parts. And it's February 13th, the New York Times review. But just the reading of it is very nice.
What's the
It's,
title?
It's on the top, Tale of a Good Night's Rest in 2 parts. A pattern well suited to the medieval lifestyle. But once it releases the story from how you should be, what you should be sleeping, and it
Oh, it's
releases
on
that.
sleep. Yeah.
The woman who says that she had insomnia so many years and was so self-punishing, then realized from an interaction that it wasn't insomnia, that was her sleep pattern, that she slept in a 2-part pattern. This other guy says that but I don't want to go too much with it.
I'll
But
look for
it's
it.
very nice.
Yeah.
And it's again on the 13th, but a nice little article, A Tale of a Good Night's Rest. So I'm stumbling upon things, and I'm also utilizing your book as a kind of a reference that I'll come to. So I'm doing still serendipity. Is that okay?
Everything's okay, of course. Yeah.
When I look at the artwork that was collected, most of it is what they call ephemera artwork. The drawings before the painting, the writings before the novel, so basically, and that's how it also was here with so many artists living here or whatever. You did get some personal unfolding of the artwork before it was literally a finished product. So much of the artwork is work in progress. And then you do find a whole bunch of weird collectors who don't like the literal artwork itself, but like the unfolding of the artwork, the drawing of it, seeing it unfold. And so there is so that does seem to resemble something of Bitcoin world anyway, because you do find what came my way was the works of the artists were the personal works. The writing that down when they were figuring something out, or the drawing or something like that, where you saw the creative process. You saw it as a process, not so much a finished product.
Danny, did you see any of that Beatles movie where they're writing?
Yes, Imagine.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called.
No, it wasn't Imagine. No,
It's new. It's a new one.
Spiro
Oh,
just mentioned
the
he
new one.
really loved it too. I think I will get
Because there is one about how he created the song.
Oh no, they're creating a bunch of songs together as a band.
This
Yeah,
is
no,
Peter
this is-
Jackson directed it, right? The Peter Jackson one. Yeah.
Yeah, we saw part of it, but did you see all of it then, Kai?
No, it's a lot to sit through.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's nice to retrospectively see the process,
But Ursha's right. It dealt with the real writer of Imagine, who was Oko. she had really written those words.
Right, but you also see that it needed that other framework, that somehow, I was reading about someone who was trying to sell his play on, right on the street on 46th Street in New York, and no one ever looked at it for 13 years, and then someone saw it and picked it up and put it on off Broadway, and it turned out to be a smash. So my feeling is accident is very important in it.
And timing,
Yeah,
timing.
yeah, it seems like the creative process doesn't, it may be in retrospect that it was right on time. But while you were experiencing it, it came at the wrong time. It didn't come with the rent money. It didn't come with this.
Yeah.
So you understand that somehow you almost see the prior life as a rehearsal for this period. And that, and that basically, that this period of time, it's actually dying before you die. The literal reasons for existing no longer are there in the same way of survival and this and that. You see that the reasons for your existence is purely creative now, to see. And as you're seeing, you are then seeing something that is hidden to the people that you're talking to, hidden in plain sight, even though they're studying it. Somehow you're looking at it from the other side of the mirror into the story. And that is a privileged view. It means that one no longer has ambition in the same way. One no longer, ambition meaning a grasping, ego-specific movement. But one then releases the story to a creative act where it's no longer possessive. So I see that one gets to see the life they've lived. And there's an aha moment waiting, because you kind of knew it all along. It was only creative. It was never literal. It was somehow a character wanting to have the experience. Pro or con, they didn't care. They just wanted to see what it was like to be a schmo coming out of Brooklyn. It's like, what the hell kind of weird story would that be? Or coming out of Texas. What a weird story that would be. More exotic than coming out of India was coming out of Texas. If you were Indian, coming out of Texas was really exotic. Okay.
Well, I actually
So-
came out of New Orleans, not Texas, but
Oh,
that's
now you're
another
claiming
story.
No, why?
You're
Because-
rewriting my story.
No, because Texan is going right wing and you don't want to. No, we'll give you New Orleans because we also met,
That's my hometown, yeah.
I really like New Orleans. It's really sweet. How young were you when you left then?
7.
Yeah, and that's nice, New Orleans. Did you go back often?
The only time I went back is when I was doing that one woman play I wrote and acted in. You saw it in Santa Fe,
Yeah.
About HD and Sigmund Freud, that. And I was invited to do, someone saw me do it in Santa Fe and asked me to come to New Orleans to the French Quarter. And that was the first time I went back since I was 7. It was really wonderful to kind of look back, and remember the memories. And anyway,
It's very nice.
they have a great cemetery near the French Quarter. It's the oldest cemetery, I think, any place. And
But, well, are you thinking of moving there?
no. But Nicolas Cage has bought his mausoleum already. He paid $100,000 for it. I saw it.
Have you seen his movie?
He
Have you seen
plans
his-
to be buried there.
Have you seen his movie on Amazon? I think it's on I
Which
don't know, it's
one?
called Pig.
Oh,
No, see it again. I just,
no,
look,
we have different tastes and.
I know, and look, I see it the third time.
No way. I love you, Danny, but no way.
No, he had to act this one.
No.
You don't think so?
I'll stick with the BBC
Oh,
things.
no, I don't disagree with you, but I'm being forced to watch movies 3 times now. So
Well-
look this up if you can. Instant happy childhood memories. A spray away.
Namaste, Danny.
Namaste. Take care of everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
Take care. See you tomorrow night and
Thanks, Danny.
bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Oh, bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.